Hello, everyone. So we know that knowledge is the property of all mankind, but publishing scientific results in the form of a scientific paper is an integral part of the scientific community, which is governed and regulated by the ethical practices and dilemmas. Today's lecture is confined to the ethical practices applied in scientific writings and dilemmas that scientists face from time to time. I must reiterate that strict adherence to ethical guidelines are needed for research and scientific writings and fostering scientific advancements. The research benefits can only be achieved if the results are published for others to understand and replicate. So every year a large number of scientific papers are retracted for a number of unethical practices of the authors and publishers. Although there are several organizations that have policies to address ethical issues related to scientific publications, how effective are they is a matter of determination. Committee on Publication Ethics and the International Council of Medical Journal Editor are some that watch ethical violations in scientific publications. Besides, individual institutions, universities, and publishing companies have their own printing policies which help in preventing unethical practices. So if any institution does not have such policies, then it should constitute committees to make sanctions against unethical practices in scientific publications. So in today's lecture, I have picked several important issues related to ethical practices and dilemmas of scientific writing, such as plagiarism, authorship, acknowledgments, types of ethical violations, best authorship practices, conflicts of interest, data malpractices, etc. So in a nutshell, fetching benefits for any reason and rewarding credits to the non-players in unethical manners is unacceptable by the scientific community, and such practices are gross violations of scientific integrity. So with this introduction, I wanted to begin my talk on ethical practices and dilemmas of scientific writing. So here we go.
Okay, so what is scientific writing? Let us define what scientific writing is. Scientific writing is a technical communication through writing our research findings in such a way that it reflects the same precision as demanded by various research processes. It demands accuracy, precision, clarity, and honesty in expressing our thoughts in the most righteous manner. Without scientific writings and publications, science will not progress, publications will not be done, research funds will not be granted, and of course, no research will be done. So this would lead to what? This would lead where? It would lead us to perish from the academic world. In other words, scientific writings are our livelihood, which we have to earn with honesty, dignity, precision, and using ethical practices. Regarding ethical issues in scientific publications, so there are many other ethical issues than you are seeing here on the screen, but my emphasis is on some of the ones which are shown here. All these ethical issues, if detected, lead to paper retraction. Paper retraction is not a good idea because it reflects someone's dignity and respect. This graph shows the percentage of papers retracted due to various ethical issues such as conflict of interest, because of which 4% of papers were retracted. These are just the approximations. Due to plagiarism, 6% of papers were retracted, and due to data fabrication, around 10%. Human welfare concerns 9%, especially where the human beings are used as subject during experiments. Duplicate publications around 11%. Authors dispute has 14% retractions, and about 18% papers were retracted due to the concerns of animal welfare. Um, so we all know what paper retractions is. Paper retraction is nothing but a formal notice by the journal to the author, declaring that their paper has been retracted for certain reasons. It means the paper is cancelled to be to remain online with a retraction note on it, and whenever you open the page, you will see the title of the paper and the authors are stamped with paper retracted, along with a comment that why this paper was retracted. So there is always a reason of retraction, whether it could be plagiarism, it could be conflict of interest, it could be anything. So as I just told, there are lots of ethical malpractices that lead to paper retraction, multiple submissions of the same paper, faking out authorships, fraudulent use of data, suggesting fake reviewers. All of them are major misconduct. So one has to be careful when writing a paper or scientific article. The question arises why ethical practices are violated. What is the need? What is the requirement? What is the benefits for the writer to violate these ethical practices? So the answer of this question is best known to the individuals who violate ethical codes of good science. But I can roll out a few here. Professional pressure from peers, of course that is one of the factors. Lack of professional integrity, the pressure of competition with peers, promotion, recognition, and awards. And I think one of the biggest reasons is not preventing unethical practices at the right time. That's one of the most important factors, that if happening of any violation of ethical practices is stopped right at the appropriate time, then they are not going to escalate. And there are various forms of misconduct, different types of misconduct, which constitute, violation of ethical practices. And the list of these misconducts, even it is even bigger than this. But these are enough to explain the intensity of violation in the ethical codes of scientific publications. For example, falsification, obfuscation, and fabrication, plagiarism, self-plagiarism, ghostwriting, informed consent, improper authorship, misappropriation, conflicts of interest, bibliometric inflation, contracting, breaching confidentiality, violating privacy of individuals, ethical violations in using experimental human and animals as the subject. So all of them they constitute misconduct. Now, unethical practices in scientific writings, a little bit more explanation about how they happen and why they happen. So copy and pasting, that's the one most common unethical practice happening around the world and practiced by various scientists, the copy and paste, because that's so easy. It's very easy, copy it from somewhere, put it in your document, it's just done. But no, it's not done. The problem arises after when it is detected. Then it amounts to plagiarism. And in many cases, papers are being just retracted. So copy and pasting multiple submissions means you are submitting one paper at a time to several journals, which is of course not allowed. You have to submit your paper only to one journal and wait for the outcome. Only then you can move forward. Redundant publications, duplicate publications. Duplicate means that once your paper is published and then you try to publish the same paper in other journal. Suggesting bogus reviewers, contract writings, and there are so many others. Um, Related to the authors, unethical practices are there in naming individuals as the author of scientific papers and scientific articles. Um, so the authorship in scientific papers is always a contentious issue. It's very tricky, it's very complicated, sometimes it creates a lot of problem, conflicts between the authors. So this needs to be resolved intelligently and amicably. Unethical practices in authorship occur as the result of coercion authorships, where seniors push junior researchers to include their names as the author without making any contributions. Awarding authorship to a person as honorary or guest authorship is also an ethical violation. Although many times this cannot be detected because nobody is going to your lab to check who did and who has contributed how much, but that is very much unethical. And on many occasions, scientists exchange their names as authors to increase their productivity, number of publications, which is also a violation of ethical codes. So it's kind of a win-win for both parties, give and take. You put my name and I'll put your name in my paper. So that's the way how mutual support happens in naming individuals as the author in scientific papers. Ghost authorship, where the original author's name is not included in the publication at all. And it is quite popular, popular. I'm saying I don't support it, but it's popular because a lot of people use it. They ask someone to write their papers, for many reasons, maybe to improve the English, maybe to analyze the data, maybe the entire paper. But the problem here is that if you are not mentioning that who wrote the paper, because in most cases it is the part of either of the corresponding author or one of the authors to write the paper and mention in the journal that such and such person has wrote the paper, analyzed the data, etc., etc. So this is of course very much unethical. And lastly, denial authorship, where individuals who have carried out entire research and wrote papers are eliminated from the authorship for a number of reasons, best known to the team and the leader of the study. So please always avoid these infringements not to happen when you are publishing a paper. Okay, so let's check with the best practices in ranking the authors. The meaning of the order in which authors are arranged varies, but in general, it indicates the magnitude of contribution made by each member of the research team. This means the first author adds the most value and the last author the least. And it's very simple. And ethically, the most senior also. So conflicts do happen and dilemmas are faced by the participating members, but such conflicts may be resolved and avoided if anyone's role in the project is defined. And prior, mutual understanding based on the quantum of work conducted it should be developed. Criteria based authorship, such as the number of contributions, experimental designing, data collection, data analysis, manuscript writing, etc., is always, advisable, always predetermined. The clarity in the conditions and expectations must be made, and always avoid the arbitrary choices of the authors. So it's not like on someone's will, okay, Mr. A will be the first author and Mr. D will be the third. No, the naming of the authors and their ranking should be based on the quantum of the work and contributions they made. Now, some more, best practices in ranking the authors. Besides, it is always better if the understanding is developed prior to starting experiments. And please be aware that if the responsibilities of the team members change, please revisit the authorship decisions. This way, a lot of agonies can be saved. Not a bad idea to show if the writings are done by the professional writers. Although ethically the practice brings a bad name. One of the ethics of scientific writing is also that all the authors must be ready to bear the responsibilities of their study and other processes involved in the completion of their study. There are some more conditions and best practices related to ranking the authors. And ethically, a team member who carried out most of the actual work and contributed towards paper writing must get the biggest share of the cake, which means the first authorship. The corresponding author should be the one who has conceived the idea, designed the study, and finalized the manuscript for publication. And lastly, the third or fourth or later authors must be based on their roles in the study. Best practices in ranking the authors. I have some more facts here which violates ethical codes or shows the best ethical practices while you are naming individuals as the author in your scientific paper. So I consider author ranking is the most beautiful is the most difficult job, since one must balance ethics and individual preferences, performances, and contributions. Nonetheless, it is always an issue between the members of the research team that needs to be resolved by them only with understanding and agreement. Here, I am presenting certain criteria and discussing them for your benefit. Often we come across power relations such as consenting and romantic authorships. It is okay up to the authors, but it is unethical. The second one is more genuine and ethical, where authors are ranked as first, second, or third, or fourth based on their substantial contributions. Experimental designing, data collection, data analysis, revising, writing, or presentation. So, the ranks are given depending upon the quantum of work performed by an individual, which is very fair. There is always an ethical stigma attached to authors who are responsible for scientific integrity, avoiding conflicts of interest and plagiarism, and bringing accountability. More importantly, giving gifts, guests, or ghost authorships to individuals is not ethically accepted, which is a conflict of interest and which must always be avoided. Another unethical criteria for ranking authors in rewards, where people want their names as the first authors in order to gain prestige, promotion, and an increase in the salary. And finally, partnerships pose challenges, especially when the supervisors, senior lecturers, and collaborators are not the part of the investigation but want to be the part of the paper. So, after authorship comes data malpractices, and this is very, very serious violation if it happens, or if it is detected in anyone's publication or paper. So playing with the original data, either by falsification or fabrication or statistical manipulation, is an unethical practice which will have very serious repercussions. Someone may ask, what's the difference between data falsification and data fabrication? Well, there is a fine line difference between the two. Falsification defines the data which already exists there, means that you have already collected honestly, but after collecting the data you found that you are not going to get the results as you wanted, so you just try to manipulate it, distort it a little bit here and there using uh, statistical tools to impress the readers and the reviewers. So falsification is that. Fabrication is for the data which is being collected. It's not like collected, the collection is not, or generation is not done, but is in the process of being generated. So during that process, if the data is manipulated, so instead of recording 4, you think that it should be 6 so that you'll get a better result. So someone puts 6 in place of 4. That is called fabrication. So there's like fine line difference, but both of them are unacceptable. Both of them are data malpractices, and in both cases the severity is same. So data falsification includes activities such as altering data to prove a hypothesis, manipulating inferences and study questions, deliberately omitting data, altering methodology, fallacious statistical analysis, or exaggerated applications of statistical tests. Doing inflated data analysis is just like adding unwanted spices to a dish that spoils the taste, and it's very simple to understand. Data fabrication such as inventing, generating, making, or altering data, adding, deleting, or manipulating data as per desire, claims made on incomplete or fabricated data, or making data to achieve specific results are all unethical scientific writing practices. So you folks must be thinking about how acknowledging someone is unethical. Of course it is not, but if someone steals someone's credit, then the way credits are stolen will be very much unethical. And I'll tell you how. First of all, writing acknowledgments is arbitrary, but it is also a job full of responsibilities. So if there is any fellowship associated with the study, it must be acknowledged, and the materials, equipment, chemicals, or even techniques borrowed must be credited properly. So if the study has received a grant, then the grant must be acknowledged along with the grant number and the name of the funding agency. Financial or technical support provided by affiliated institutions must be suitably acknowledged. And not doing so will definitely amount to malpractice. Plagiarism is an ethical violation, and it is one of the most often violated scientific codes of conduct, whether done deliberately or inadvertently. Copying ideas, words, and pictures and presenting someone else's work as your own are referred to as violations of the ethical codes. So improper citations and incomplete quotations and falsification of information may lead individuals to trouble. So it is better to stay away. Now, while doing scientific writing, sometimes people are trapped in dilemmas and confusion, which leads them to plagiarism. We all know plagiarism is a big no-no, not only for students, but for people like us, scientists, professors, researchers, etc. The scientific writings may be self-plagiarized by self-praises or lots of in-house citations, which must be marginalized. There may be sectional plagiarism, whereas a section of someone else's work is taken and claimed as one's own. There may be unintentional plagiarism that may happen inadvertently, which is not problematic so far as you identify it and address it. Scientific writings may also be plagiarized by style and structural plagiarism, where the style and structure of someone else's writing are adopted without giving critics to the original author. When people copy an idea from someone without credit, it is referred to as idea plagiarism. Evidence plagiarism is committed when someone takes away evidence collected by someone else without acknowledging the original source. And finally, poor paraphrasing also leaves plagiarism in the document. So wherever paraphrasing needs to be done, please do it wisely and correctly. And here are some guidelines to avoid plagiarism. And if you remember in my previous lectures, I have already talked about various aspects of plagiarism in scientific documents. So I'll not go into details, but only touch base to emphasize that plagiarism is one of the most frequent violations of scientific ethical codes. And to reiterate, please always give credit to the original source. Any verbatim taken from another source must be quoted or rephrased with citation and try to reproduce similar meanings of the original text when you rephrase. So, what scientists should do when writing a scientific paper? Number one, they should be honest and must make valid interpretations and justifiable claims. There should be reliability in reporting results, making transparency and verifiability. They should make the raw and processed data available on demand to the journals and reviewers. They should apply scientific ethics when using animals and human subjects and be independent, impartial, and unbiased to the team members of their study. Conflicts of interest is another major issue, and it is also one of the major violations besides, plagiarism and other violations. So conflict of interest is an important issue, as I said, which occurs when a person's or entity's vested interests raise a question of whether their actions, judgment, or decision making can be affected. Why conflict of interest is an important issue? Because it often has legal ramifications. So, in order to avoid such problems, it is always recommended to please carefully evaluate if there is any conflict of interest in your publications. Conflict of interest may be actual, which is happening in your publication, or it may be very apparent, or it may be potential, which means the probability of conflict is high. Conflict of interest affects professional judgment, and it has financial implications as well. So what do we need to do to avoid such conflicts? The best course is to declare any conflict of interest if there is any. Now, conflicts of interest are caused due to secondary interests, teaching, administration, financial, and vocational pursuits. Such conflicts compromise judgmental integrity of a person in conducting scientific research and very often results due to nepotism, self-dealing, and excess compensation. Fake peer reviews of scientific papers also amount to an infringement of scientific ethics if detected. Many times authors suggest fake reviewers to the journal editors when they submit their papers, or guest editors choose referees based on their personal choices. Using non-institutional email may sometimes cause conflict, and of course, quick reviews in just few days done by many journals is also unethical, but not authors, because authors do not have any control on it. It's the decision of the editor who violates ethical codes of conduct. So, all right, although you know I gave entire lecture on predatory and hijack journals earlier, but here also I wanted to mention it because it's a part of code of conduct. So there are many journals which are predatory, bogus, or hijack journals. Just want to caution you that you have to be careful when choosing a journal to publish your paper. These journals, called predatory or hijacked or bogus journals, they are deceptive journals with no editorial board. In many cases you don't find them. Lack of transparency, fake impact factors, and spamming just to attract the contributors, inconsistent licensing policy, bogus website, claiming to be a legitimate journal, offering quick publications with a fee. Most of them are open access. Non-existing editorial board members. If you try to approach any one of them, you will never be, contacting them, or they will never contact them because they don't have any contact details on the website. So, so after watching and listening, what do you think are the responsibilities of the authors? Well, just maintain originality in the scientific work. Keep all the records, data, and financial transactions intact, and maintain a high degree of integrity, honesty, and objectivity in scientific research. Always stay open and transparent in your dealing, and always declare a conflict of interest, and make all the disclosures on time. And finally, protect the intellectual property and take consent to use public contents. So, nearing its completion, this lecture now highlights scientific publication ethics, such as following best writing practices, best scientific research practices, guidelines of the Committee on Publication Ethics, and the guidelines of the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. Now, many universities around the world, especially in the developing world, have extremely strict rules on scientific and ethical misconducts. I'm from the USA, and I know very well how my university in USA acts if any ethical misconduct happens. And just a glimpse, there should be evidence-based reporting of misconduct leading to the investigation, followed by sanctions, reprimand, suspension, revocation, etc., etc. And finally, with this, Today's talk comes to an end, and I hope that you enjoyed it and took some information back home. See you soon again with another important topic of scientific research. If you have any topic in your mind on which you want me to present a lecture, please feel free to send me the email with the topic, and I shall try to prepare and upload it here on my channel. So please take good care of yourselves, stay safe and healthy, and goodbye.